The pilot clutched the phone as she told the police, "I'm telling you, there's a black boy causing trouble in the waiting room. Come in immediately." She then turned to the black youth and said, "Get out immediately. You don't belong here." Captain Sarah Monroe's voice echoed throughout the pilot's lounge as she towered over 16-year-old Caleb Brooks. His visitor's badge dangled from its lanyard as Caleb tried to explain. His voice was shaky. "Ma'am, I'm just waiting for the instructor. She said I could sit here." "And I don't care what she said. This area is for authorized personnel only," Captain Monroe interrupted, already at the ready with his radio. "Guard, I have an unauthorized individual here who needs to be removed immediately." Caleb's bewildered eyes couldn't hide his fear. All he did was watch TV while waiting. So that was really a crime? Before the story continues, if you believe that everyone deserves to be treated fairly, regardless of skin color or circumstances, let us know where you're watching from and hit the subscribe button to receive more stories like this. While his peers dream of becoming internet sensations, hunting for explosive moments of social media fame, 16-year-old Caleb Brooks has chosen a completely different world for himself. One painted not by fleeting trends, but by vast, endless skies. His room tells the story better than words can. Not band posters or trendy game collections, but countless aeronautical charts, detailed cockpit drawings, and yellowed panels that he cares for like treasures. For Caleb, every streak of white smoke across the blue sky was not just the trace of a flight, but a promise. Every distant roar of an engine was not just a sound, but a call of destiny. Long before he could drive a car, Caleb could recognize most commercial aircraft by sound alone. The solid roar of a Boeing 777 or the soft, fleeting hum of an Airbus A320. On weekends, when his friends gathered at shopping malls or were immersed in the virtual world, Caleb rode his old bicycle to the local airport, carrying a pair of old, scarred binoculars, patiently sitting by the barbed wire fence just to watch the planes take off and land like sacred rituals. That passion is not just admiration, but devotion. Every night, when his homework was done and the house was quiet, Caleb would sit cross-legged on his bed, carefully leafing through the pages of a second-hand aviation manual, running his fingers over the cockpit diagrams as if he were actually sitting behind the controls of a real plane. His parents, knowing the fire in their son's eyes, were supportive, even saving up every penny to send Caleb to a few hours of flight simulation training at a nearby training center. So when Skyward Airlines announced its Career Shadow Day program, a behind-the-scenes look at aviation operations for a select group of students, Caleb didn't see it as a competition. It was a calling. He spent sleepless nights perfecting his essay, crafting every word like a craftsman, building a bridge from his heart to the dreams that hovered in the sky. Out of hundreds of entries, Caleb's essay soared the highest, not only because of his technical prowess, but also because of the sheer purity of his love for the skies. When the acceptance email arrived, Caleb could barely breathe. He printed it out and taped it to the wall next to a diagram of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, a silent testament to how far dreams and determination can take one. That day, by all rights, should have been the happiest day of his life. But Caleb had no idea that, in just a few short hours, he would come to understand that to continue reaching for the sky, sometimes one needs more than passion. One also needs unshakable courage. Skyward Airlines Pilot Lounge is located at the end of the terminal, a small world reserved for those who have reached their dream of flying. Caleb Brooks, wearing a simple hoodie and dynamic sneakers, sat quietly on a large leather chair, filled with excitement mixed with a bit of childish nervousness. All around him, pilots in neat uniforms carrying flight backpacks spoke in technical terms that Caleb had long since memorized. The rattle of suitcases, the low laughter, the smell of coffee mixed with the smell of old leather, all made him feel as if he could close his eyes and open them and be a part of that world. Caleb squeezed the guest pass in his hand, searching for a fulcrum for his racing heart. His guide should have arrived 10 minutes ago, but Caleb didn't dare ask anyone, afraid of drawing unnecessary attention. He pursed his lips, telling himself to be patient. True passion couldn't be rushed. As Caleb watched silently, his eyes caught sight of an old man fidgeting near the bar. He was thin, with hair as white as a stork's, and he walked slowly with a cane. A moment later, the cane slipped from his hand and fell heavily onto the marble floor, making a dry sound that made a few people turn around, then quickly turn away as if they had just seen something disturbing. Without hesitation, Caleb stood up, walked quickly forward, bent down to pick up the stick with both hands as if it were a precious object, then gently handed it back to him with a gentle smile. "Let me help you," Caleb said, his voice as sincere as his eyes. The old man nodded gratefully, a trembling smile on his aged lips, and his cloudy eyes suddenly lit up with a rare warmth in his final days. It was only a brief moment, but it was as if the whole world had stopped in that quiet kindness. But as Caleb returned to his seat, fate, along with prejudice, struck without warning. Captain Sarah Monroe, a tall female pilot with skin as white as snow and eyes as cold as ice, had just entered the lounge to prepare for her flight. Her eyes swept over Caleb, paused and then darkened. A lone, ununiformed black teenager sitting in a space reserved for those in silver power suits. To Monroe, the sight was no more than a stain on the red carpet. Without a second of hesitation, she strode forward, her voice cold. "Can I help you?" Caleb, before he could explain, saw Monroe pull out a walkie-talkie from his belt, whisper a few short words, and in a moment, a large security guard appeared beside him like a shadow. With the eyes starting to fall from the people around, Captain Monroe bent down, leaned close to Caleb's face, his eyes tense with suspicion, and said a sentence that made the atmosphere in the lounge seem to shatter. "You don't belong here." No screaming, no outright accusations. With just 4 words, Monroe had ripped Caleb's dreams apart right where he thought he belonged. And in that moment, amid the whispers that filtered through the rows, Caleb sat there, alone, facing the cold truth that sometimes, in order to soar, one must learn to stand firm even before one's wings have opened. The entire pilot lounge suddenly fell silent like a strange wind, as Caleb was surrounded by curious and suspicious eyes from the people around him. The security guard, a tall man with muscular arms, approached him like a dark shadow. His eyes filled with suspicion. Caleb's hands began to tremble. He tried to grip the guest card tightly, but felt like his heart was being squeezed by the oppressive gazes. He didn't understand. He couldn't understand why things had gone this far. "We have to get you out," the guard said, his voice hard and cold. "You are not allowed to be here." Caleb opened his mouth, but his throat felt tight. Everything around him was blurry, unfamiliar faces, cold eyes, words that echoed indistinctly. He just wanted to find a way to explain, to make everyone understand that he was just a passionate child, dreaming of one day flying in the sky, but all he could do was look at his shaking hands, trying to keep his legs from collapsing. Please don't," Caleb said, his voice weak. I'm just waiting for my guide." But those explanations seemed to fall into the silent void, blown away by the wind. Caleb felt an indescribable fear, as if he was drowning in a vast ocean from which he could not escape. Just then, a familiar figure walked in from the lounge door. It was Linda Cooper, Caleb's guide, the one he'd been talking to for the past few weeks before arriving. She saw the tense situation unfolding, and in an instant, the world seemed to brighten. "No," Linda exclaimed, walking quickly toward Caleb, her eyes filled with panic. She ran to the guard, immediately putting herself between them and Caleb. "He's our guest. He's not the one being sent away." Linda placed her hand on Caleb's shoulder, the warmth in her eyes making his heart lighten a little. The guilt and fear in Caleb's heart gradually eased, even though the world around him continued to spin. "Caleb is part of the Career Shadow Day program," Linda said clearly, her voice firm but gentle. "He was invited here to participate in a special opportunity to learn about the profession of pilot. He did nothing wrong." The guard looked at Linda with surprise, clearly confused by this sudden intervention. She was not intimidated. Her eyes were as sharp as the light cutting through the darkness. The people around also started to look at each other, as if starting to realize what was really going on. Caleb was not an intruder. He was just a child with bright dreams that they could not judge by a hasty glance. "Sorry, I don't know," the guard stammered. "We'll check again." Linda stopped looking at him and turned back, her warm eyes looking at Caleb. "Are you okay?" Her gentle question was like a comfort, making Caleb feel like a wave of peace was washing over him. He nodded, although his heart was still confused, but at least someone stood up to protect him. The fear gradually passed, and Caleb realized that sometimes justice and kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Just as the tension between Caleb and the guard died down, another wave hit, making the tension in the air return. Police sirens blared in the distance, an inevitable warning. Patrol cars pulled into the airport parking lot, stopping outside the lounge. Caleb felt his heart start to beat faster, partly from panic, partly from not understanding what was about to happen. He had thought the situation was resolved, but now the presence of the police brought things back to normal, as if he were still the one being chased away for no apparent reason. But then, when the lounge door opened again, a luxury car stopped right in front of the door. A shiny black Mercedes-Benz, like a powerful ghost approaching. The car door swung open, and a woman stepped out. All eyes in the room turned towards her, and all were surprised by her appearance. But to Caleb, something in this moment made him feel familiar. She walked with a strong but resilient appearance, her hair neatly curled and her Skyward Airlines uniform fitting, sparkling in the sunlight. But it was when her eyes met Caleb's that he realized who she was. Caleb's heart sank a little, then immediately a warm feeling rose indescribable. "Caleb," her voice was soft but powerful. "You are here?" It was a mother's voice, but it had an unmistakable steely edge. The room was silent, no one dared to speak. It was none other than Caleb's mother, Captain Maya Brooks. But what surprised everyone was not just her title, but what she had done over the years. Maya Brooks was not only a talented pilot, but she was also the woman at the head of Skyward Airlines, the president and CEO of this famous airline. A name that no one in the industry would dare not respect. Maya is not only a loving mother to her son, but also a woman who broke all boundaries to make Skyward Airlines one of the largest airlines in the world. No one knew that, because Maya chose to avoid the spotlight to focus on work and family. But now, when she stepped in, the truth shone through every surprised look. No one dared to doubt Caleb or the quality of the Career Shadow Day program anymore. She walked quickly to Caleb, patting him on the shoulder, her eyes soft but firm. "Thank you for protecting me," she said to Linda, then turned to Caleb. "Do you know I've been in your shoes? When you were judged by your looks, when you had to prove you were more than what people thought you were." Caleb could only nod, a wave of pride and warmth washing over him, washing away all his worries. His mother had always been his role model, and now she was the one who made him realize that sometimes there was no need to prove himself to anyone. This story isn't just about Caleb. It's about people like his mother who sacrificed, stood up, and changed a system where justice and dreams are no longer out of reach. Maya Brooks no longer had the gentleness that Caleb had seen in her mother's eyes when she entered the lounge. Her gaze was now sharp and cold like a sharp sword, causing the atmosphere in the room to suddenly become stifling. Every step Maya took carried with it an unquestionable confidence, as if she was the one standing at the pinnacle of power, and no one could shake that. She turned back to look at Captain Sarah Monroe. Maya's eyes flashed with annoyance, but there was no anger. She just looked at Monroe with a terrifying calmness, then spoke, her voice devoid of emotion. "Captain Monroe, I demand an explanation immediately." Those cold words, like an order, could not be denied. Monroe stood frozen, her lips pressed together, her eyes darting back and forth, as if trying to escape Maya's hold. She tried to say something, but only mumbled incoherent words, unable to come up with a convincing explanation. The silence stretched on, as if each second of the struggle between power and truth, between what was right and what was unjustifiable, lengthened. Monroe's self-esteem, already eroded, seemed to shatter completely. Maya didn't wait for an explanation. She turned to Caleb, her hands clasped tightly around his, her eyes soft but determined. "Caleb, let's go." The words were soft, but had the power of a declaration of war, pushing away all confusion and awkwardness. The whole room fell silent at Maya's decision. All the eyes, all the whispers, all fell silent, as if witnessing a great change not only for Caleb but for everyone present. And in that moment, no one saw Monroe as someone with power anymore. Her image, in that moment, was no different from someone who had failed. As Maya led Caleb out, no one dared to object, even those who had stood silently watching the scene. A few seconds later, Linda Cooper's phone rang. It was just a brief call, but it was enough to put Monroe in a difficult position. "Captain Monroe, you are suspended immediately. We will clarify this matter." The lounge door slowly closed. The light from outside shone in, highlighting the silhouettes of Maya and Caleb. At this moment, Caleb no longer felt afraid. He felt a strong sense of protection, a great sense of pride. Not only because his mother was a talented pilot, but also because she was the one who taught him a valuable lesson about courage, about justice, and the courage to stand up against injustice. 6 months later, things have changed dramatically. Caleb's story has become more than a moment of crisis. It has become a symbol of change and new hope. One spring morning, sunlight streams through the windows of Skyward Airline's headquarters, illuminating new posters that have just been hung in the office's lobby. It's a picture of Caleb, standing with a group of young people from different backgrounds and ethnicities, holding hands, looking towards a bright future. Their smiles represent unity and a common desire to fly high, without any limits of prejudice. The large caption below the photo made everyone passing by stop to read. "Fear should never be the price of following your dreams. Fear should never be the price you pay for following your dreams." It's more than a slogan. It's Skyward Airline's commitment to an equal future, where young people like Caleb don't face discrimination, but instead are welcomed and empowered by endless opportunity. Caleb has become the face of the airline's diversity program, a role model for the next generation who won't have to face the same fear he did in the pilot lounge. But for Caleb, this change is about more than just having a name on a poster. It's about affirming that everyone has the right to dream, the right to fight, and the right to be respected for those dreams. Maya, in a media interview, looked at the large poster of Caleb. She smiled softly, but her eyes were filled with boundless pride. "When I started my career in the aviation industry," Maya said, her voice full of determination, "I never imagined that I would be in this position. In my years working from small airports to international flights, I witnessed injustice, blatant discrimination. As a woman, as a black person, I always had to work double, triple to prove my ability. But I never gave up. I understood that it was not just me, but thousands of others who were fighting every day to be seen as they should be. And today, when I saw Caleb, I knew that we had begun to change. Change not just in one company, but in this industry." Maya continued, her voice rising with strength. "We can't let young people, like Caleb, pay too high a price for their dreams. We have to build a culture where diversity isn't just a concept, but a lived reality every day. An industry where no one feels afraid to pursue their dreams. And that's why our diversity program isn't simply about hiring, it's about creating a holistic change, from the inside out." Maya looked at the poster again, then back at Caleb, who was standing beside her. He looked at his mother with gratitude in his eyes, a look that said everything that could not be put into words. Together, they had gone through difficult times, but it was their resilience and belief in their core values that made a difference, not only for themselves, but for the next generation. "Today, no one is afraid to dream," Maya continued, "because this sky, so vast and so vast, truly has room for everyone.